and a very warm welcome to ETCISO. I'm Himanshi Tiwari and this episode is sponsored by Infoblox. Now, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. For this conversation, we're joined in by Dhiraj Sancheti, Head Information and Cybersecurity at Shoppers Stop. We're also joined in by Suresh Govindachetty, Senior Manager Sales Engineering, SAARC at Infoblox. Thank you so much for joining, and let me start with you, Suresh. Let's talk about DNS. It's often seen as a basic internet infrastructure, but increasingly it's been, viewed as a critical security layer. So talk to us about why is DNS becoming so central, so important to cybersecurity today?
Yeah, so good evening, Himanshi. Internet is driven by DNS. DNS today is mostly used by most of the organizations as an infrastructure service.
Yeah.
But there is increasing awareness, which is good. People are seeing that DNS can be used in so many different malicious ways. So the awareness is actually increasing.
Yeah.
Organizations which can convert the DNS from being an infrastructure service to a security control are able to leverage the benefits of DNS, and they're able to manage cyber attacks very efficiently. And we all live in the age of AI. So AI is changing the nature of cyber attacks. The attacks are actually more directed, and they are very, very specific. And they are also, very importantly, single use. So which means that the traditional security models, they have started struggling. So that is where DNS is becoming security control for most of the organizations, and the realization is actually growing.
All right, Dhiraj, if you can come into the conversation, at this point in time, many cyber attacks, whether malware, whether phishing, or whether data exfiltration, they involve DNS as well. They involve DNS at some stage. So talk to us about how can DNS visibility help detect those threats earlier?
Yes, absolutely. It helps because initially DNS you can consider as availability, but now point in time DNS runs on a 53 port, and it is giving a much more visibility, because firewalls in any organization, you block the unwanted port, but for port 53 you need to keep always open, and that visibility, any file transfer, any malicious domain transfer, it gives you a visibility when you are putting your data, Infoblox or any DNS kind of data to your SIEM. It will give you a immense visibility to take a initial level action to stop the threat. They can exploit it in your environment.
Yeah, but what happens when you sort of overlook DNS as a part of your enterprise security architecture? From a CISO's perspective, what are those risks?
So DNS caching, there are multiple risks. Now AI comes into the picture. Again, bots are there. There are lots of things that we need to keep into the consideration while we are dealing with the security, specifically DNS. And when the DNS is something which we need to keep always eyes on, because your initial communication happens to the DNS only. After that, it will convert into the application layer. And however, you need to keep focus. You need to keep eyes on such kind of threats as well.
All right. Suresh, talk to us more about how can DNS intelligence help organizations to sort of identify those suspicious behavior?
Yeah. So every interaction which is digital has DNS as a backbone. The first interaction of any digital communication happens through DNS. So which means that DNS sees everything. It looks at all the user interactions. It looks at all the server interactions. It also looks at all the cloud workload interaction as well.
Okay.
And in the modern age, we also need to understand that there are a lot of IoT devices, smart devices there. So you cannot install any agent there. So these agents are also continuously talking to various different services within the organization as well as outside the organization as well. So the visibility part is actually served by DNS, because DNS sees each and every transaction, it records it, and this becomes a central control point from which you can effectively implement security.
Yeah. All right, Suresh, we are in distributed environments, like you were talking about IoT. There's IoT, of course, there is cloud adoption, hybrid work, and a lot of basically it's expanding the attack surface, right? So
Yes.
in detail, if you can talk to us about how does DNS help security teams maintain visibility across the distributed environment that we are living in?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So, as I said, every interaction today, whether it is on-prem, whether it is cloud, or whether it's IoT, it all happens through DNS.
DNS, yeah.
So, every interaction is actually seen by
Mhm.
DNS. It is recorded by DNS as well,
Mhm.
right? So, while the attack surface is actually expanding,
Mhm.
we can cover every part of the digital infrastructure
Mhm.
using DNS,
Yeah.
because ultimately everything has to reach out to DNS first,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
while the attack surface is expanding,
Mhm.
organizations who leverage DNS, they have better visibility,
Yeah.
they have better control, and organizations which convert the DNS into a security control, they are able to manage cyber attacks in a far efficient way.
All right. Thank you for making that point. And so, Dhiraj, from where does DNS security sort of fit within the broader organization's framework when we talk about zero trust or the threat intelligence systems?
Yes, absolutely. Now you consider the threat intelligence and new age devices, SIEM, SOAR. DNS is the first point where you get a visibility and you can put the data which is passing through DNS, which can be your DNS can stop if you get a early visibility and you put those
Yeah.
right detail into the EDR, XDR, and SIEM SOAR. Your DNS attacks will get reduced and you will get a larger visibility. So nowadays NIST is also 2.0 is also talking
Yeah,
about the
yeah,
control
yeah,
framework. Now there are many regulatory bodies, they are talking about the regulatory framework which DNS can help to reduce the attacks.
All right, Suresh, you have a bird's eye view. You've been speaking to a lot of companies and seeing
Yes.
their security architecture.
Yes.
When we talk about DNS specifically, what are those key capabilities that organizations need to keep in mind when they are actually strengthening their DNS, security systems?
A very good question. So the first capability should be the organization should be a producer of original threat intelligence. So they should not be just aggregating threat intel feeds and then just providing it to you. So which also means that the organization should have threat
Mhm.
hunting teams
Yeah.
which goes and hunts out for all those threats.
Mhm.
So it's a very key capability. Today
Mhm.
there are many players who are just aggregating the threat feeds and then providing. So which is not the best form of threat intelligence.
All right.
The second capability that the threat intel provider should have is they should be able to do behavioral based detections.
Okay.
So that is a very, very key capability, because today a detection that is only based on signatures and the reputation is not going to be enough.
Mhm.
So the quicker the detection using behavior, the better it is. So that is the
Okay.
second capability.
All right.
The third capability that the vendor should actually provide is with respect to lookalike domains.
Mhm.
The fourth capability is the vendor should be actually be looking at a proactive way of defending things
Mhm.
rather than being reactive.
Hmm.
So by proactive, what we mean is that we are not looking at after the incident actually happens. We should be able to detect those incidences far earlier. So, which means that the threat intel feeds that you provide, they should be of very, very high quality. The next capability we need to have is very deep integrations with the existing ecosystem. Say, for example, the solution should be capable of integrating with your existing SIEM, existing SOAR solutions. You should be capable of integrating with our existing security technologies. So what happens is that the solution actually shares that intelligence with the rest of the ecosystem. So all the ecosystem is actually equipped with the latest threat intelligence.
Alright.
So these are couple of technologies, couple of key capabilities that should be there in the solution. But there are a lot many others.
Yeah.
But these are the key ones that should
Key
be
ones,
there.
yeah.
Yes.
Before ending this discussion, Dhiraj, looking ahead from a CISO's vantage point, how do you see DNS evolving as a proactive security layer in the modern, cybersecurity architecture of
Very
organizations?
important. Actually, DNS is not just an infrastructure as of now. It will give you a complete visibility to your entire infrastructure. Nowadays, hybrid infrastructure, on-prem or on SaaS infrastructure. But DNS is one who is playing the critical role to pass the initial traffic. If you have a complete visibility, As I said earlier, there are multiple technologies which you can integrate it with to get an initial visibility and to stop the initial attacks itself. So from CISO point of view, it's a very critical and important role that DNS is playing.
Yeah, and it's evolving into a proactive
Yes,
extra
absolutely.
layer
Yes,
in
absolutely.
your existing security, modern architecture
absolutely.
security systems. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for being a part of this conversation. This was crisp, short, yet very enriching for the ETCISO viewers.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much for being a part of it. And to our viewers, stay tuned for many more such informative conversations only at ETCISO.